including peace and security and health for citizens, amongst other things. 28 years ago, that resolve came under challenge, and the world witnessed a horrendous genocide against the Tutsi. Since then, the government of Rwanda has worked hard to create a more stable, a stronger, and a just society. We in the United Nations have been privileged to be a partner in that journey. We worked with the government of Rwanda and the people of Rwanda in defining homegrown solutions when COVID-19 struck. The United Nations stepped up again. We were able to mobilize about $27 million to help the government to deal with the demand for vaccines. Over the years, the United Nations has been a proud partner in working with the government of Rwanda to create opportunity for young people, to create jobs for young people. Today, the United Nations continues to be a partner to the government of Rwanda in dealing with today's problems, such as improving the productivity of agriculture. We've also been a partner to the government to ensure that no one is left behind, to ensure that we create a more dignified society for people with disability. We're living in very challenging and difficult times, but here in Rwanda, we also have reason to be hopeful. The United Nations is investing in ensuring that those with brilliant ideas can come to the front and their ideas have a chance to be heard and to change the world. Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, my brother, Dr. Vincent Biruta, my brother and colleague, Ozonia, I know you are connected online, and I'm having to remind myself that I'm only ad interim here. Your Excellency, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Claver, my brother, the Lord Mayor of City of Kigali, I haven't seen him, but he should be here somewhere. Great to have you, Lord Mayor. Excellencies, ambassadors, representatives of international organizations, NGOs, civil society organizations, private sector, fellow heads of UN agencies who are here, senior government officials present, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good morning once again, and happy 60th anniversary. It also happens to be UN Day, so I need to say happy UN Day. Honorable Minister, 60 years ago, the government of Rwanda was welcomed into the United Nations, the most universal organization of its kind, committed to solving global commons through mutual commitments, cooperation, and collaborative action. In doing so, the government was affirming its resolve to fight injustice, to uphold peace, security, and health for citizens, amongst other things. Honorable Minister, 28 years ago, that resolve came under serious challenge, and the world witnessed a horrendous genocide against the Tutsi. Recently, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres reflected on this time and on our failure as an international community to intervene, to prevent and to stop the genocide against the Tutsi. While we have not experienced your pain, Honorable Minister, we hope that you will allow us to walk with you through your journey to ensure this never happens again. we share the Secretary General's reflection on our failures. We also honor the memory of those who lost their lives. And we stand in admiration of the resilience of survivors. But since then, the government of Rwanda has worked hard to create a more stable, stronger, and just society. This country has shown that a nation can act decisively together. Something we should be doing when it comes to global issues like climate change, like the cost of living crisis that we're going through right now. In the United Nations, we feel very privileged to be a partner in that journey. And this is a partnership that's delivering for the people of Rwanda. We are working together to address difficult challenges, including global realities like climate change, as I said, like inequality, budgetary support. While we can all point to improvements, the overwhelming impression is that in Rwanda, the partnership is performing favorably. And I think we can all be proud of that. And that is due to the leadership and strong commitment that your government is championing, Honorable Minister. Allow me to highlight some of the work that we have carried together and the possibilities that lie ahead as we seek a more dignified and prosperous life for families up and down this country. We have strengthened our partnership to deliver more positive health outcomes for Rwanda. As recently as 2020, when COVID-19 struck, the United Nations stepped up and mobilized resources, including, as you saw on the video, up to $27 million to contribute to the fight against COVID-19. We played a central role in coordination and advocacy of vaccine roll-ups, especially through the COVAX initiative, and Rwanda was among the top countries to receive COVID-19 vaccines in Africa and to achieve vaccination levels of over 68%. That we should be proud of. COVID-19 and other medical pandemics speak timelessly to the importance of working in harmony with others and having the courage and patience to stay the course together, even in the face of seemingly daunting odds. And this is something that we draw inspiration from in the United Nations. COVID-19 offered lessons for addressing other global crises. And today, we need the same resolve to address other challenges that are coming our way. Building on that strong foundation, we are creating opportunities for young people. Honorable Minister, young people account for up to 69% of the entire population of this beautiful nation. Over the years, the United Nations has worked hard with the government of Rwanda to create opportunities and jobs for young people. By way of example, we've worked as part of Generation Unlimited, iAccelerator, Youth Connect, Connected Girls, and many other initiatives that are creating opportunity for young people in this country. Honorable Minister, we are also currently working with several ministries, but especially the Ministry of ICT, to take full advantage of the digital revolution and to shape Rwanda's journey towards a digital future. We've worked with the Ministry of Justice to set up the integrated electronic case management system, thereby streamlining access to justice and reinforcing accountability across the system. That has become a benchmark for many countries around the world. And again, it is something that we can all be proud of. We've also worked with the government to develop many other platforms to enhance the health outcomes of Rwandans and to predict future trends. This includes electronic medical record systems, rapid SMS, monitoring for all health programs. Today, Honorable Minister, the United Nations continues to be a partner to the government of Rwanda on improving the productivity of agriculture and food systems. Much of this economy is dependent on agriculture, and the United Nations is working with your government to ensure better agronomic practices, better access to seeds, better access to technology that is needed to adapt agriculture to climate change, while growing more nutritious and abundant food supplies. We've also been a proud partner in ensuring a just and fairer society. Together, we've worked to ensure gender parity through a particular focus on creating opportunities for women and girls and removing barriers to their progress. Today, Rwanda is proud to be one of only very few nations globally that have achieved gender parity, with about 60.3% of legislators being women. That is something we should be proud of. Some private sector companies that are operating in Rwanda have now also embarked on a process of achieving gender seal certification. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, we've also been a partner to the government to ensure that no one is left behind. This includes our support and collaboration through the disability platform. While a lot remains to be done, we are creating a more dignified society for people living with disabilities in this country. Looking ahead, Honorable Minister, together with our UN resident coordinator, Ozonia, who is connected from New York right now and could not join us physically, we are creating a committed UN country team and staff to continue to work with your government and other partners to innovate solutions while accelerating the implementation of your National Strategy for Transformation and Agenda 2030. We will do what it takes to be a partner of choice to the government and people of Rwanda in their development aspirations. Honorable Minister, Rwanda stands today as a powerful testament of human spirit's ability to heal even the deepest wounds and emerge from the darkest depths to rebuild a stronger society. Your country offers an example of how nations can act in a coordinated, collective fashion with greater sense of urgency towards achieving our global goals. Because it is only by collective action that governments can resolve global problems and achieve global self-interest, while also driving national economic growth. Happy 60th anniversary. Happy UN Day. Murakoze cyane.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gomera. Now, before the keynote address from our guest of honor, let's run a few photos that show the collaboration between the United Nations and the government of Rwanda, technical team. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now invite, with his permission, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of the Republic of Rwanda, the Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta, for his keynote address.
Mr. Ozonia Ojielo, United Nations Resident Coordinator, I understand you are following us online. Mr. Maxwell Gomera, Acting UN Resident Coordinator. Your Excellencies, High Commissioners and Ambassadors, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, good morning and happy UN Day. It's a great pleasure to be with you this morning as Rwanda celebrates the 60th anniversary of its membership to the United Nations. Indeed, 6 years ago, on 18th of September 1962, Rwanda was admitted to the United Nations family. Today's date, the UN Day, which marks the 77th anniversary of the entry into force of the United Nations Charter founding the United Nations Organization, was selected to highlight Rwanda's commitment to the spirit and values promoted by the Charter. We are therefore celebrating 60 years of shared history marked by painful experiences, but also success stories and lessons learned, which inspire our renewed partnership for a better and shared future for all. While we look firmly to the future together, we carry with us the failure of the international community and the United Nations to prevent or stop the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994, despite the early signs of its preparation and the presence of the United Nations Assistance Mission for Rwanda, UNAMIR, before and during the genocide. A few months after the genocide was stopped on 8th November 1994, the Security Council established an international criminal tribunal for Rwanda with the mandate to prosecute and judge key genocide perpetrators. The ICTR rendered 62 convictions against 93 indictments and established major milestones, including being the first institution to recognize rape as a means of perpetrating genocide. We will continue to work with the UN in the judicial sector to restore the historical truth about the genocide committed against the Tutsi in Rwanda, for the genocide to never happen again, be it in Rwanda or in any other part of the world. And this will be based on the imperative of justice and the need for the recognition of responsibility. Distinguished guests, despite the difficult circumstances, we have learned from the past and have chosen to focus on the future and the good we can continue to accomplish, cooperating actively as members of the international community. Rwanda is now a united, dynamic, and ambitious nation, thanks to the determination of the Rwandan people, but also thanks to the partnership with the international community and the United Nations, which has taken a progressive path since the last 28 years. Indeed, over the past 20 years, the United Nations and its agencies have played a key role working alongside the Rwandans in the reconstruction and the socio-economic transformation of this country. Today's celebration is themed Partnering for a Better Shared Future for All, which shows the direction in which we want to continue taking our partnership with the UN over the next 60 years in sectors that impact the lives of our people and contribute to a better world. In his speech to the 77th United Nations General Assembly, His Excellency President Paul Kagame recalled that the United Nations and other multilateral institutions retain the ability to set an agenda around which we can all rally. Rwanda will continue to play its active role in addressing our common challenges in diverse areas, including gender equality, refugees' rights protection, climate change, and much more. In the defense and peace-building sector, Rwanda's participation in peacekeeping operations is a constitutional mandate. To date, Rwanda is the fourth UN contributor of peacekeepers to the UN and has contributed 73,569 military personnel to the UN and African-led missions in Sudan, South Sudan, Mali, Central Africa, and the Central African Republic. Currently, it deploys 5,283 peacekeepers, including 4,692 military personnel. Rwanda will continue to give its contribution to the search or consolidation of peace around the world. Mr. Resident Coordinator and the acting one, I wish to say that Rwanda recognizes and appreciates the work done by your teams through various UN agencies in collaboration with our own institutions. And I wish to encourage you to continue working with the government of Rwanda for the development of this country. I wish to conclude by affirming that the future is promising and we remain committed to working closely with the UN and its agencies for the benefit of our people, the development of Rwanda, and for continued peace and progress globally. I thank you.
Agencies, and Mr. Anders Berlin, Director of UNCDF. Could those esteemed guests kindly join us, please? Thank you. Photographers. Honorable Biruta, Ambassador Gatete, Mr. Gomera, Mrs. Sandra Jambo, Mr. Berlin, and all UN heads of agencies. Photographers. I'll ask, with their permission, Honorable Biruta, Ambassador Gatete, and Mr. Gomera to please, yes, stay in front. Now, Thank you. We'll now proceed to our first panel, which shall take about an hour. It's titled Rwanda's Development Trajectory. It will be moderated by Ambassador Claver Gatete, who's the permanent representative of Rwanda to the United Nations. Quickly, a biography of Ambassador Gatete. Like I just said, he's the permanent representative of Rwanda to the United Nations. Prior to his appointment, he served as Minister of Infrastructure between 2018 and 2022, and as Minister of Finance and Economic Planning between 2013 and 2018. Ambassador Gatete also served as the governor of the National Bank of Rwanda between 2011 and 2013, having previously served as the deputy governor. From 2005 to 2009, Ambassador Gatete was Rwanda's ambassador to the UK, Ireland, and Iceland. Ambassador Gatete, the floor is yours. Thank you. Once again, the panel will take about an hour. We'll proceed to maybe 2 questions from the audience quickly, then we'll move on to the next panel. Ambassador Gatete.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know who I'm moderating because I don't see the panelists. So, can you invite the panelists here?
Very sorry about that. All right. First panelist will be Ambassador Christine Nkurikinka, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Cooperation Initiative. All right. Next will be Mr. Leonard Rugwabiza, who's the Economic Advisor to the Minister of Finance and Economic Planning. Then we'll have Ms. Juliana Lindsay, who's the UNICEF representative in Rwanda. We'll next have Professor Senet Fiseha, who's the Director of International Programs at the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, as well as Chief Advisor to the Director General of the World Health Organization. She's not present? All right. Next we'll have Dr. Christelle Giraneza Uwantege, who's the co-founder and Public Relations Director at Urukundo Initiative and the 2019 Accelerator winner. Ambassador Gatete, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our team here today, we are going to have a conversation, not the normal panel that you know of. And I'm going to break all the rules. There are questions that have been prepared for me. I'm going to present new ones because I want a conversation. I want to make sure that this is really a conversation. Yes. And I want to start that today the UN is 77 years old. Rwanda is 60 years old in the UN system. We've been working together since then with the United Nations. We want to see how far are we up to date, and what's our plan for the future? What's the hope for the Rwandans as we celebrate the 60 years anniversary of our being in the United Nations? These are distinguished panelists. As I said, I don't have to explain to them. I mean, I don't have to, I want them to be able to tell us really who they are. And of course, I'll start with Leonard because he's the only man here in the panel. Leonard, we've been together for a long time. And I know you are important. Tell the people how important you are. Who you are and how important you are. 1 minute. Go ahead. 2.
It's, as the bio is saying, I'm the economic advisor to the current Minister of Finance and Economic Planning. Actually, I was appointed by Ambassador Gatete as economic advisor to the minister. At the time, he was Minister of Finance. Yeah? So I didn't get the chance to work with him as an advisor, but I worked with him as the government chief economist and also as the Director General of National Planning before that. And before being Director General of National Planning, of course, I worked for 2 years with the African Development Bank. And I've been with the ministry like for the last 20 years because I joined actually in 2000, left 2 years for the ADB, but came back. So I've been, I think I've been doing everything in that ministry.
Thank you very much. The time I left Minecofin, I think you are the only chief I left behind. Thank you. Ambassador?
Thank you. I'm Christine Murikinga, the CEO of Rwanda Cooperation Initiative. Yes, prior to that, I was ambassador of Rwanda to Sweden, and before that, the ambassador of Rwanda to Germany. I've been working basically in diplomacy all my career, I would say, in different positions. And it's a pleasure to be here today as we celebrate this milestone of 60 years of Rwanda at the UN. And I'm looking forward to the conversation we will have. It seems to be very interesting as we will be breaking many rules.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador. Juliana, we're here in Rwanda here. The whole UN knows you, but not everyone. So tell us who you are and also what you intend to do. But just give us your introduction, and then we'll go the details later.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. My name is Juliana Lindsay. I'm the UNICEF representative here in Rwanda. I've also worked with UNICEF in 5 other countries on the continent. Have enjoyed
Recording
it very
in
much.
progress.
I have a daughter who's 12, so I care about children, not just from a policy standpoint, but also from a personal maternal standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christelle. I saw so many titles: Accelerator winner, head of Rukundo, and so many things. And when I was reading your bio, read at your age, I don't know how much else you have to achieve by the time you reach my age. It's a long time. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning. My name is Christelle Giraneza Uwaneje. I'm a fresh graduate medical student at the University of Rwanda, so I'm starting soon as an intern medical doctor at Rwamagana Provincial Hospital. But I'm also a social entrepreneur, so I'm a public relations director and co-founder at a youth-led social enterprise called Urukundo Initiative, and an awardee winner of Innovation Accelerator by Imbuto Foundation, UNFPA, Ministry of Youth and Culture, and Koika Rwanda. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Really, that makes you very important. So now let's start with Leonard Rugwabiza. Leonard Rugwabiza, the reason why they chose you to be here is because of who you are. You started with the Rwandan economy a long time ago, immediately after the genocide against the Tutsi. You were the chief economist. You went through the structural adjustment facility, the enhanced structural adjustment facility, the poverty reduction. You went through the HIPIC, and you are still in the ministry. I don't know how much else. I don't know who else can explain to us, in simple terms, where are we and where we intend to go. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I don't know either presentation, a few slides, just so that people can have a good idea. Okay, that's very good. Since actually Maxwell in his speech already touched many of these things, so I will be very fast and only talk about the situation that we found in 1995 after the genocide against the Tutsis. We had lost more than 1 million lives. We had more than 3 million refugees, and many of them in neighboring countries, meaning instability, of course. At the time, the GDP per capita was around $146. Inflation was very high. We actually had to demonetize the Rwandan francs at the time because the people who had gone away in exile had left with all the banknotes. The infrastructure was dilapidated. More than 120,000 genocide suspects in prison. It meant that we needed actually to take care of them because they had right also. But at the same time, we had victims of genocide that couldn't even feed themselves, many of them. So we also needed to take care of that. We didn't have the capacity, the little capacity that we had in the country at the time. We had almost 80% of civil servants who didn't have university level. So that was senior 6 level. And so the truth was we actually, everywhere you would look at, you would see it was a priority. So we needed to restart everything. So what we did, and I'm not going to talk too much about the really emergency period from 94 to 98, except saying that during that period, the very first thing was putting in place the government of national unity, trying to put in place some institutions, trying to secure the country, making sure that there is security, stability, a little seemingly going back to normal life. So I remember a few months after the end of the genocide, actually April 95, we decided to reopen the National University of Rwanda. At the time, that was only one university that we had, and it was in Butare, that is now Uye. We reopened the university with, as I'm telling you, 80% of civil servants had no university level. It actually meant that we didn't have the lecturers. So that was a big challenge. And I remember at the time, the United Nations, UNDP, actually had to pay the lecturers coming from all neighboring countries, Uganda, Kenya, DRC, Burundi, even from Canada. So that's the only way we could actually reopen the university at the time. And a good story about that university is that that year, we were able to actually graduate, that first year, 2,000 students, when for the university was created in 1963. So for the 30 years, the university only graduated 2,000 students. And that first year, we had the 2,000 students plus. So that's a very good example of how things were changing quite fast. 96, 97, 98. In 98, we decided to actually leave the post-conflict mindset and start thinking development. With the Urugwiro discussions, I would say we had national consultations, but we had almost all Rwandans in this consultation, all elite from all walks of life, but at the same time, also different political parties, academia, even people who were not Rwandans, development partners, only for the knowledge that they had, even learning from South Africa, who had gone through a reconciliation process. So the discussion was recognizing the past, what is our reading of the past, but also what should we look at for the future. And I think this, what I would call the founding principle for nation building, have determined almost everything we have done afterwards for the last 28 years, I would say. So the very first one, the most important for us, was unity and reconciliation. That is the basis of everything that we do. Even if we had a development program that would divide Rwandans, we wouldn't implement that development program. So with unity reconciliation, we are also thinking that we needed no discrimination, but also a shared development, long-term development vision, citizen-centeredness and inclusiveness. And I'm talking about people with disability, with community engagement, I'm talking about decentralization, I'm talking about even gender equality. And also, as people often ask us, what is your growth model? I would say even proper growth.
Try to hurry up.
Yes, so the rest, I think we've got zero tolerance to corruption, solidarity and agachiro, the Rwandan dignity and value of life, and the homegrown initiatives. So what has been achieved? Where are we today? I think, I believe that's Professor Collier that the first actually talked about Rwanda development hat-trick. It means we had very high growth, an average of 7.4% growth for the last, I would say, 21 years. And this is including the recession that we had in 2020. So it means that GDP actually that was $1.1 billion in 95 is now $11 billion. So that's 10 times. With 8% growth, it's normal. We reduced poverty and we did also reduce inequality. The latest figures we've got on poverty are actually 38% when we use the national poverty line. And of course, the economy, the structure of the economy is also changing from low value to high value. In terms of social progress, we actually achieved quite a lot. Almost all the MDGs were achieved, except from MDG 1. So in terms of maternal mortality, child mortality reduction, even financial inclusion, we reached 93% in 2020. I would say even the image of Rwanda has changed on the international scene. There is a time when many of the people, and I could say it without any doubt, many of the people in this room, the first time they heard about Rwanda, it was actually because of the genocide that happened in Rwanda. With time, the genocide against the Tutsi is still part of Rwandan story. It is part of Rwandan story, but I think the image has changed. Today, if you talk about Rwanda, it's not, the country where the genocide happened. It's also the country that is looking forward, that actually has hope in terms of development. And I think I will actually maybe take this as my last by one slide. This is an extract of a speech that the President of the Republic made at the 20th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsis. He was actually saying, after 94, everything was a priority, and our people were completely broken. But we made three fundamental choices that guide us to this day. One, we chose to stay together. Two, we chose to be accountable to ourselves. And three, we chose to think big. I think nobody could say it better than that. When the refugees came home, we are choosing to be together. When we released genocide suspects in anticipation of Gacaca, we are choosing to be together. And so on. When we decentralize power and decision-making, we are being accountable. When we award scholarship and appoint public servants based on merit without discrimination, we are being accountable. Something, when we invest in a broadband network, a developed country, and this is from some work that we did with the World Bank also, we picked six pillars: human capital, competitive private sector, trade and regional integration. Again, modern agriculture and food sector is very important for us because we still have majority of our population living from agriculture, efficient and accountable institution, and urbanization. I think this is where we are going.
Thank you very much, really, for this quick summary. Just a follow-up question. You've really told us 94, 95, everything was almost destroyed. The institutions were destroyed. The economy had declined by half. Poverty was at 78%. Inflation at 64%. It cannot get worse than that. And from that time, there has been development all the way. Almost on average of actually 8% if we exclude the 2020 period up to 2019, we're still doing very well. There must have been some pillars which have indicated at the end that are really supporting us, because for poverty levels to bring it from 78% to 38%, it's not easy. And I know 5 years ago, there were 1 million people who were actually graduated from the poverty levels, which was a big success. When you are designing the Vision 2020, we also had a vision for the IT, for the technology to support the entire economy. And the first 5 years was to sensitize the people after 2020. Another 5 years was to install the broadband infrastructure throughout the whole country. And after that, it was supposed to benefit almost the entire economy. That's why in government, they are connected. In several governance institutions, as mentioned before, in the judiciary and also other systems. Also, the IT has had a role into that, the health sector, the education, the financial sector. How is that one reflected in the current development process in terms of supporting our economy? We know that the economy is still led by the service sector, but how has that one contributed to that?
So in terms, I would say, in terms of the participation of technology and especially ICT to, it is in all the sectors, as you are pointing out. Some of the examples you actually gave them, but I think it's, if you look at financial inclusion, how do you pass from, we were at 42% in 2008, we are now at 93% of financially included people. This is because of technology. This is mainly, I would say, even the mobile telephone. The second thing is, one example that I could give is the e-government. All the services government today, you want to ask for a passport, you want to ask for an ID, everything you are trying to engage government for, you actually can do it through a website. So e-government has become a reality for us. But this was even very important during the COVID pandemic because it allows us business continuity. So it's not only, when you look at the contribution of IT today in the economy, it's 3%. It used to be 0%, it's only 3% today. But if you look at the contribution through the different sectors, that's where you actually see that it was very important. I'm even, thinking about in the health sector, we use drones to distribute bloods, in different health centers. We also, during the COVID pandemic, again, we were using robots in treatment centers. So technology has actually more and more, I can't say that we have been able to take all the benefits of technology, but through the different plan, we actually are seeing technology becoming more and more a part of our everyday life and actually participating to the growth of the economy.
Thank you very much. That's why the President of the Republic is the chair of the Broadband Commission. That's the importance he's given, and he's serving all the Rwandans and the entire economy. Let's go to Juliana. Really, some of the issues that are beneficiaries of the development process is the education sector, is the health sector, and of course, the social sector. We want you to tell us where we stand today, because we've been working together as a team with the United Nations and with Rwanda and all the institutions that are, of course, that are relevant to that. I want you to tell us the story where we stand today.
Thank you, Ambassador. So I think one of the key messages, of course, is incredible progress. You saw the slide from Leonard on the social progress. And we can see that from a situation where hardly any children were going to school and the university was closed, we now have over 90% of the 7 to 15-year-olds in school, attending school, which is fantastic. We see that vaccination rates, independent of COVID, but even for children, for measles, et cetera, that vaccination rates are very, very high. And we know that child mortality has come down significantly. It used to be well over 100, and now it's around 50, which is a significant improvement. The one thing I would note that we need to think about going forward is that many of these incredible advances took place between, say, 2000 and 2010. And since 2010, the incredible improvement has been a little bit slower, which is normal, right? When you have such a terrible situation, then it's easy to solve problems with relatively simple solutions, like vaccinations for children, for example. Now we're in a situation, to Rwanda's great credit, where in health, for example, the basic problems for children have been dealt with. And so now the solutions are more complicated because the problems are more complicated. It means that the baby that used to, if it was born a month or 6 weeks or 2 months premature, 20 years ago, we just lost that baby. But now that baby can survive. But the methods of getting that baby to survive are more complex. We need doctors who are more highly trained. We need equipment that is more sophisticated. So we need to then tap into these more sophisticated solutions. In social protection, you mentioned the social protection system as well. And we see here some really positive homegrown solutions. The 1 cow per family, the Gareja program, for example. We see homegrown solutions in the health sector, with the Mutuelle Santé, and with the community health workers. That's a rather unique effort to make sure that there are community health workers at every single village. They've been trained, they have basic supplies, and that's a large part of the reason why child mortality has come down so substantially, and why maternal mortality in those first 10 years came down so substantially. So these are excellent practices that obviously need to be continued and refined, and I know Ambassador Christine will also probably talk about how they can be exported as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just come back to you on the health sector. Yes, for education, you have universal education, primary and secondary school. We have universal health care, including Mutuelle Santé, as you mentioned. And you have been investing heavily, and that's why we are saying in these areas in the health sector, we are seeing the maternal mortality coming down significantly, the child mortality and everything else. It's because of the investment that has been put in. And of recent, the government has been investing in infrastructure with different hospitals, the top one and others also in the rural areas. I remember in the rural areas of recent, you saw the inauguration of Munini Hospital, Gatonde Hospital, Gatunda Hospital, Nyabichenye, in the rural areas. In addition to what you have in the city here, the King Faisal, which is going to be expanded, the Kanombe Hospital also, which is planned to be expanded, and also in Masaka area, it is the 3 centers together, Cancer Center, the Heart Center, and also the Teaching Hospital, in addition to the big hospital, the biggest that you anticipate, 1,200 beds. How do you see Rwanda becoming a future hub for health tourism?
Well, I know this is a goal of the government, certainly, and the Masaka complex, for example, is a good example of an institution of an infrastructure that will help make that happen. When that does happen, it's of course important to make sure that not only people from the region can access those services, but also that people from inside Rwanda can access those services. And this is why the district hospitals are so excellent, because they're closer to the people. The challenge then is to make sure that all of those district hospitals have very highly qualified doctors and that they have the equipment that they need in order to make sure that they can serve the population. I'll give you one small example to bring it to life a little bit. We've been working with the Royal College of Pediatricians from the UK, bringing in obstetricians, midwives, et cetera, to train some of the local doctors and the local midwives. And we also, with some funds from a company in Japan, were able to buy quite a lot of equipment, oxygen concentrators for babies, incubators, et cetera. And so many of the doctors and the nurses in hospitals in 12 districts now know how to use that equipment. And the thing I love about this initiative, 2 things actually. One is that they're very good metrics to show the reduction in morbidity, to show the improved situation for women giving birth, the improved situation for the babies surviving. But also, we started out with the doctors from the UK coming for 6 months. They don't come for 6 months anymore. Now they come for just a few weeks. And the great thing is now the doctors from the Rwanda Pediatrics Association are the ones who are doing the mentoring for the other doctors in other parts of the country. So I think it's a very nice example of starting something with technical assistance from outside, but it doesn't stay that way forever. That's a short-term solution to then upskill the local doctors and midwives and nurses so that they can then take forward the mentoring, exactly as you say, into the districts, into the sectors, so that everyone has access to that service.
Thank you very much. So we have the infrastructure from the referral hospital to the health posts close to the people. We have the community health workers, and the number is really kind of growing. How is the issues of the equipment and the capacity that we are seeing as the population grows and as the need grows? And you want to serve not only Rwandans, but also other people in the region.
Well, you know, we see government investing in quite a lot of equipment. You mentioned the Masaka complex. We know that there's more equipment coming into King Faisal. So we see that there are investments taking place. We see that there's training taking place to make sure that the doctors and the nurses have the ability to use the equipment. And this is something that's important to mention, I think, the nurses. We often think about doctors who are absolutely critical, but I'm sure you will learn, Christelle, that you can have every bit of knowledge and the right equipment as the doctor. But if the nurse doesn't have the knowledge and the experience to support you, then the operation may not be successful. So it's very important to have both of those together, which I know the government is working on.
Just before I go to the next panelist, you're also, as UNICEF this time, involved in a project on the technology in schools. How do you see the future of teaching for the future jobs? How do you see the role of technology playing a role into that?
Very good question. The program that the ambassador is referring to is called GIGA, and it's an aim to get all of the schools in the country connected to the internet, not just here, but in other countries as well. It's a challenge to make sure that all of the schools have not only the internet connection, but that can't just be a 4G connection in the head teacher's office. It has to be proper fiber so that the entire school is connected. It can't just be a laptop for the head teacher and a couple of the other teachers. It has to be laptops or at least tablets for all of the children in the school, ultimately. And this will take time, but there's a real push to make sure that all of the schools can get connected because it's very important to have these digital skills. I've learned recently that in some cases, some of the recent graduates, perhaps a little bit earlier than your time, Christelle, but they often graduated from university not having learned PowerPoint or Microsoft Word or Excel, which are pretty basic applications in order to be able to work in the work world. I see great potential for technology also for secondary school. 44% of the 16 to 18-year-olds in Rwanda are not in school. And they may not want to go back to school. This is not my number, by the way. This is a Ministry of Education figure. They may not want to go back to school. They may want to do other things. But if we can help them to get digital skills, if we can help them to learn basic bookkeeping or basic entrepreneurship through online methods at a youth center, even if it's just on their phone, that can expose entrepreneurial opportunities to them so that going forward they can take care of their families. Because ultimately the middle income goals, we need all of the children at least to get through secondary school. And the digital possibilities can be a big help with that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Juliana. I want to come to the ambassador now. Ambassador, at the UN, everybody is asking me about the homegrown solutions. From South America to the Caribbean, to the Eastern Europe, to everywhere. They ask me, say, you are doing something great in terms of the homegrown solutions. And there are so many initiatives going on. I know that in earlier days, in early 1990s, when we started, we had the big job in terms of really trying to address some of the issues, structuring the government. From decentralization, we had 105 districts, we reduced them to 30. We had 12 provinces, we reduced them to 4 provinces and the city of Kigali. We took away all the vehicles from the government workers, from the ministers and others, and we put a scheme in place which is working very well. We reformed the land, where we are one of the few countries that have all the land registered now. Electronically, you can access your land and everything else, which has helped in terms of development process. But we have had so many initiatives that we call the homegrown solutions. Can you just give us a hint on what you have done and what we can share within the context of South-South cooperation?
Thank you, Ambassador. I think yourself and Leonard were there from the beginning, and I will not go back to what he have been also already explaining about the aftermath of the genocide against the Tutsi. But what he mentioned is that at that time we had an unprecedented situation, and we needed to find unconventional solutions and measures. At that time, the government had to take some tough decisions, some bold decisions to address the many challenges that was at hand and needed to be addressed to be able to build a united nation, a stable and prosperous nation. Looking back, I think Leona mentioned the national consultation, the Rugwiro consultations. It was about looking inwards to understand the root cause of the genocide against the Tutsi. Why did we come so far that we people killed our own people, but also to make sure that then we build a stable basis to build to be able to start a sustainable development of the country. So looking inwards, this is where it was discovered, I would say, that we had so many values, good practices that were lost during colonial time, either banned or lost through colonialism. And it was decided to bring them back, to update them, of course, to the current situation the country was in, and to make it possible. So those are the homegrown initiatives, that's how they are called. They are rooted in our tradition and culture. And of course, it also had the, I would say, the advantage that the people can relate with those initiatives. If you bring an initiative, let's say, with a German word, or French word, or English word, they might not really relate with that. But if you say Giringa, if you say Mihigo, those are words they can really relate and relate with, and really be able also to implement them and to understand them. So we have a range of this kind of homegrown initiatives. It has been already mentioned. Giringa has been mentioned. I think you mentioned the Muganda, Leona. A very effective one is Imihigo, the performance contract. And those are some of the initiatives that have contributed to the development of the country, to the many achievements that we see today. Now, if we go in the area of multicultural diplomacy and cooperation, and talk about South-South cooperation. South-South cooperation, it means that countries from Global South work together to address issues and challenges they have. It has been implemented since many years, but in the last 10 years, it has been gaining more and more importance in the area of cooperation. I hope I will be not too long, but...
No, just briefly.
Yes, just briefly. So in the area of South-South cooperation, and this is what we do at Rwanda Cooperation Initiative, is to share knowledge, to make knowledge accessible. So in the last, let's say, maybe 10 years, we have been receiving a lot of delegations coming from different countries as they heard about the success or the development we are making in Rwanda, and they wanted to learn from us. In the previous years, the delegations, the ministries contacted their counterparts here, or even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they organized the visit. So there were no, how do you say it, no coordination of the visits. There were no follow-up after the visits. And it also became, as the numbers and the interest was growing, it became a burden, so to say, to the institutions, as the people who were preparing and receiving the delegations had all those other assignments within the institution. So that's where the idea came to build a Rwanda Corporation. We exist since September 2018. It has been 4 years now. And our mandate is basically to make this collaboration possible in a South-South cooperation setting. And also in another dimension, that is also another tool in the cooperation toolbox, the triangular cooperation. Triangular cooperation means that two countries from the global south work with a third country, either country or institution, usually known as development partners, and this is where we have the triangular cooperation. Maybe at this point, I want to recognize the very good collaboration we have with UN agencies, and particularly with UNDP. We much appreciate the collaboration and the support they give, particularly to RCI, but also to the work we do on a daily basis. Maybe very briefly, so far we have received more than 400 delegations from more than 40 countries since 2018, and they come to benchmark on in various areas. On one hand, we have the homegrown initiatives we've been talking about, but we also have the good practices, as we call them. So we also went in 1994, 5, 6, the years after the genocide against the Tutsi. We also went to other countries to learn from them so that we don't reinvent the wheel. We adopted them, but adapted them to our reality. And today we have countries that are coming back. We have learned from them some 15, 20 years ago, but today they come to learn from us, sometimes in the same area as we developed faster and found other solutions that they could learn from us. And maybe a last word. Yep. What I like to say also is we have people coming and delegations coming to learn from us, but it doesn't mean that we are already where we want to go. We know we have a vision 2050. We also it's learning from each other. So they come to learn from us, but we also learn from them and identify also areas where we can learn from them and improve whatever we have.
Oh, thank you very much, Ambassador. Your work is so important to the United Nations, where we want to share South-South cooperation. I know in G77 plus China, I know in the least developed countries, they're all asking for this kind of information. So these things, don't take them for granted. We know that initially we are seeing it from where we go and, of course, learn from others. I myself led a team to Tanzania to learn. And when we developed, they came back to learn from us. So this is something that was very, very useful. Imihigo is so important. It is so important because it is a tool for the country to function. The Girinka program, which has benefited the poor, as you mentioned, is extremely important. For the Umuganda, we are starting soon the Umuganda with UN, with the Secretary General, with the Mayor of the City of New York. We are planning for that Umuganda to start also in New York to make sure that that work where the community is working can take root. So it's also very important. One area that is very, very critical, the Integrated Financial Management System, the IFMIS, which really, one payment structure from procurement up to the last payment is something that has helped us and also that is helping many other countries to see in terms of accountability, transparency, is very, very important in terms of contribution. So really what you have done is something that we need to compile, we need to learn from each other, we continue to learn from each other because the circumstances are different from many countries. Now, let me go to our most, but please go ahead and say something.
Thank you, Ambassador. As you mentioned, the integrated financial management system, maybe I can also add that we don't only receive delegations and take them around, we also make follow-up. And also provide training or technical assistance as Rwanda Corporation. We don't have all the expertise in our institutions, but being a government institution, we have access to all expertise, being it in ministries, in non-government organizations, civil society, and even the private sector. And afterwards, we implement different projects with other countries. We forge partnerships, also responding to SDG 17. We forge partnerships and also really in the spirit of building a better world for all, starting with our own countries, but also globally.
No, this is a very important contribution to UN membership. And I hope that you're also including the peacekeepers. We are number one in terms of women peacekeepers, just in the whole world. And at the same time, the way our peacekeepers undertake the work is beyond the United Nations mandate, where they go and, of course, interact with ordinary people. They build schools, they build housing, they provide solar energy, they also provide the cooking material and everything else. So it's very, very important that we also include that one as one of the innovations. I know we are left with a few minutes.
5, and then we open the floor for 10 minutes.
Definitely. So, yes, Christelle, you are the last because you are very important. You are the most important here, and you are the youngest. And you want to make sure that people like you who are innovative at your age really becomes a good example for the youth for the future. There are issues, the issues of today are different from the issues of our time. And that's why you can undertake so many things at the same time. Being a medical doctor, being an innovator, being an example. But we are having a youth that is trying to be innovative. Just tell us how you see the youth for the future and what do you think that can change.
So thank you so much, Ambassador, for your question. So because I'm left with 5 minutes, I'm going to use them like back in medical school, they could tell us to do oral examination in 5 minutes and it's a whole bunch of information. So I'm going to try. But before I answer your question, there are some statistics that I want to share with you, which pushed me as a young person to also contribute to solving some alarming health challenges that the government of Rwanda is trying to work on and that young people are also facing. So annually, 21 million girls aged 15 to 19 years in developing regions, Rwanda inclusive, become pregnant, and 12 million of them give birth. As if that's not enough, mental health issues, HIV/AIDS, and sexually transmitted infection prevails in sub-Saharan Africa. In Rwanda, the health challenges affecting youth are alarming. The Rwanda Demographic and Health Survey report indicate that an estimated of 23,544 teenagers gave birth in 2019, and the same survey indicated that 5% of Rwandan adolescents aged 15 to 19 have begun childbearing with projected increase due to COVID-19 pandemic. And as a young person and as like a fresh graduate from medical school, I looked at these statistics and I was like, is studying theory in medical school and keeping them for myself like what I can do as a young Rwandan person, or I should actually help my youngsters with the knowledge that I was privileged to get from school. So that's how I, together with my team of medical students, we founded in 2019 Urukundo Initiative. So it is a youth-led social enterprise. So Back in the medical school, I was in many student associations. It was easy for me to just found it as a non-governmental organization. But I was like, Crystal, do you really want to be a grand entrepreneur, or you just want to be like someone who is independent, who can help the government of Rwanda and also your young sisters and brothers by addressing these health challenges, but also grow as a person, as a young person, and also give job opportunities to other young people. So continuing with the statistics, the UNFPA reports that 1 in 5 Rwandan girls get pregnant and start childbearing before the age of 19. So all these statistics made me think of what I can do as a young person. And that's how at Rukundo Initiative we do prey-based learning, and we came up with an innovation, which is Urukundo Life Skill Board Game. And that tool that we came up was for parents to have an educational tool that can help them create a bond with children and talk about matters which are sensitive. So sexual and reproductive health and mental health. And believe me, those are connected, because I can think of these young girls who become pregnant and their future is jeopardized. So to answer your question, what is my vision for Rwanda? So my vision for Rwanda is to see young people as myself contribute to the economic growth of the country, and also partner together and use their potential and skills to come up with the technological innovations, as you are saying, and different solutions to actually address matters like climate change, health challenges like sexual and reproductive health and mental health. Because I believe if we have a healthy body, then we can also even contribute to the development of our country. And I dream of a country where different generations come together and find solutions, and also have discussions like the one that we are having right now. If you asked me 2 years ago if I was thinking of myself sitting here with UN agencies and high commissions and ambassadors talking about matters which are dear to me, I would tell you no. I'll tell you that I believe I'll be just a medical doctor in the hospital. But I don't think that's what young people are. We are not dot poems, we are comers. So we can do a lot and we can contribute a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. This is very inspiring. And we hope that the young people who are, of course, the future today and the future tomorrow, are really following your footsteps so that they can think, given that the government has provided the environment for innovation, for thinking loud, for really understanding our problems and finding solutions for those. Now I think it is time to open up for the Q&A.
Let's open the floor for about 5 to 6 minutes. Let's take 2 questions, then answer them at once. Do we have a microphone going around? Okay, all right. Raise your hand. Just say your name and ask your questions. Anybody? All right.
Nobody?
Any question? We have a hand raised at the back.
Thank you very much. I am Laura Odisiwe. I work for an organization called Kepler that owns Kepler College, a university that is empowering youth to deliver high-quality services. We partner with UNHCR to give tertiary education to refugees. Now we have more than 200 refugee graduates from across Rwanda, and we are the first university to have a campus in the refugee camp, precisely Kiziba refugee camp. My question is about, we have talked about how far we have gone, and it is really interesting, and we look forward to see more years of these partnerships. I would like
African High Commissioner in Rwanda, Mandis Mpatlo. And this has been quite an enlightening session, and I want to particularly zoom in on the national consultative meetings that you held. It's something that, for me, means a lot. I'm glad that, in the process, there was also learning from what South Africa tried to do to deal with this past. Now, what I'm interested in is whether what came out of the national consultative meetings is something that is documented somewhere so that one can be able to access that kind of information. So that's just the question that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. One last question, sir.
Mine is not a question per se, but a contribution to the last speaker, and also in relation to what Rwanda aspires in terms of what His Excellency President Kagame has said, to think big. The tool that they have developed, okay, come again? Okay, I'm the UNFPA representative. The tool that has been developed by the initiative, which the young lady indicated, is a tool that we have seen as potentially going beyond Rwanda. So they have been given the necessary support whereby they are going to get the international pattern and then give them the tools to be able to take that tool beyond Rwanda. So the point is we need to think big, not just in Rwanda, but beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's answer the first two questions before we move on to the next panel. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I want Leonard really to come in on this one here. Leonard, really, now you've told us about the economy, where we are and where we are heading, and you have a vision that is very clear, but you have had challenges in the past. Now, the financial sector is also one of the key ones, where initially we had only the central bank and a few banks. Now we have so many. We have the capital market, we have the stock exchange, we have the Kigali International Financial Center. We also have so many funds, from Agaciro Development Fund, which is a sovereign wealth fund. We have Rwanda National Investment Trust. We have Ejo Heza, and there are so many that are happening that is really helping in terms of stabilizing the economy, and that contributes to the to the macro stability of the economy. Now, going forward, apart from the external shocks and other, internal shocks, really, what are the constraints that you can mention, not only in the economy, but also in the social, just everywhere? How do you see it? Because once you are at the top of the economy, you are looking at all other areas and the factors, because this one contributes to almost all the sectors. What challenges do you see?
This is a big question.
Just mention a few, for the interest of time.
Yes. So some of the challenges, already if you look at the situation in which we are today, inflation, but if I come back to the case of Rwanda, and that's not only Rwanda. Climate change is an important part of it. Today, actually, Rwanda, the inflation that we're experiencing is more coming from climate change than the Ukraine conflict. So in a sense, climate change is happening, it's not going to stop, so it means the economy needs to adapt, mitigate, but also adapt. And I think there's a big role for everybody in the room for that. The other thing, of course, in Africa, the conflicts, but also now globally, the conflicts is also an important part. And I'm sure the UN have got an important role to play on that. But again, many of the world leaders will have an important role to play on that. Now, let me go a little further into, if you look at the situation that we're having today, I do not think that we are reacting fast enough, but clearly, debt vulnerabilities are going to increase all over low-income and middle-income countries. So it's very possible that we are going into another debt crisis as in the 80s. And I've been in some of the meetings of the G20, and I don't see that we are actually reacting fast enough. we take measures, we make decisions, but at the end of the day, it takes years to implement them. You know? If you only look at the common framework on debt treatment, it takes, like, we have been here for the last 2-3 years talking about it. Decision has been made, but you can't even say that Zambia has made a lot of progress or that Ethiopia or Chad have made a lot of progress. So I think we need to understand that the problems are happening a lot faster than in the past, and we need to act a lot faster. Not only make decisions that will take 5 years to implement, actually act a little faster. The other thing you were asking, like in Rwanda, some of the challenges that we will be experiencing is also, and I don't think it's Rwanda only, it's having a government that is not only a government, but a government that is versatile in the sense that you need to be able to adapt to different situations. So it's you need to be able to adapt, but also to change, to be flexible enough if you want, because it's not only the pandemic, but the shocks will keep happening, and I think we need not only to be prepared, but some of them will take us off guard. So we need to be flexible enough to change our strategy, even the course of, as long as we keep in view the same vision and the goal. I think that is going to be very important. The other thing that is going to be important, and it's also the social cohesion. I always tell people, unity and reconciliation is one of the strengths of Rwanda, but social cohesion in many countries is going to be the big challenge that they are going to face, especially when the crisis comes. It's going to be very difficult to manage the population. I think that's an important part that we need to take into account for the years to come also.
Thank you very much. The social equation, the climate change, which is global, which everybody is working together to address. The issue of security globally, which also has an impact. The debt levels, especially after COVID, and also the energy crisis. Of course, the energy, for the debt, there is small room for almost everyone, which leads, of course, the inflation part, less development and all that. And the energy is becoming one of the big global issues that was also affecting many of the countries. We are also looking at the solution that you gave, adapting and creating resilience in so many sectors, especially the health sector and all other areas, to deal with the kind of shocks that we are seeing is very, very important. Thank you very much, Leonard. There was a question on really the issue of consultative meetings that we had, where we analyzed ourselves and then came up with the solutions, where we said we need to share power, and that's why there is the forum for political parties, where if you are a president, if you are a party that wins, you provide the presidency, but the parliament has to be headed by another party, and so forth. We have also looked at women playing a big role and putting it in the constitution that you cannot have less than 30% of women in decision making, but also where we thought that there are so many things that we need to address in our own system for us to be able to move forward. How do you respond to what the High Commission from South Africa mentioned?
The answer is yes. It is documented. It is documented. The other thing is actually, I know that Rwanda Corporation is developing even modules to teach about some of these things, and the Rugwiro discussion is a big part of the module on Rwanda development trajectory, but also on nation building. Yeah, the two modules, Rwanda Corporation is actually developing that, and it's part of it. Yeah, so it's well documented.
Okay, thanks. You want to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to offer to His Excellency the High Commissioner maybe to get in touch with us so that we can give him access to this information, but also see how we can organize an event where you can get more information about it. Thank you.
Yes, Juliana, I can't leave you because in the UN, when you are debating, especially on gender, Rwanda always comes up all the time. And we know exactly where we are coming from. We know the constraints that you had, how we removed them and all that, and you keep coming number one, number one, number one in so many different things. So what would you have to say about it?
Thank you. You know, I think everyone knows that Rwanda has done very well in terms of gender, especially in the parliament, in the cabinet. We're seeing higher percentages of mayors. I think 30% of the mayors are now women, which is very good. And many of the UN organizations have worked together with Rwanda since early days on this. I know UN Women has done many, many trainings. UNICEF looks at the girl child. UNDP looks at female entrepreneurs. WFP and FAO look at women farmers. There are all sorts of different examples. If I may, I just want to answer the young lady's questions about international organizations and how we work with the challenges very quickly. One of the wonderful things about the progress that Rwanda has made is that it challenges UN organizations to work differently. You know, 20 years ago, we were paying for teachers, we were delivering actual food, we were bringing in actual drugs, medicines that we were paying for. None of that happens today. And the reason it doesn't happen today is because Rwanda is capable and has demonstrated that it has strong IFMIS, government budgeting systems in place, so there are not concerns about budget support. And that challenges us to do exactly what Kwabena from UNFPA was explaining. Not funding the manufacturing of 100,000 of the board games, but rather linking the company to international patents and international distribution mechanisms. And I think that's really exciting because it challenges us to step up our game in the type of support that we provide. It's a lot easier just to give drugs and to give food, but it's better for Rwanda at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. So go ahead.
Ambassador, I just want to break the rules as you said from the beginning, and maybe have a question for our youngsters here, Christelle. She's talking about technology and all the use of the ICT, but I've also talked about the homegrown initiative, so meaning rooted in our culture and so on. So. Do you know our homegrown initiatives? How do you appreciate them? And do you see any way now looking into the future how we can combine those?
And that will be the last one.
Yes. So thank you so much for your question. So I believe that homemade initiatives are very, very important. And at Urukundo Initiative, we consider ourselves a homemade initiative as well. So we don't put aside that we are in digital age and there is technology, but when you are bringing a solution up in front for the Rwandan community, you don't have to forget that there is culture involved and you are dealing with a sensitive society. And you don't have to put them aside. So bringing a solution, you have to take everything into consideration. So what is a solution that you're bringing up front and making it homemade, it's very, very important. Like at Rukundo Initiative, when we made the board game, we made sure that we work with young people who are innovative, but in the country. And actually the tools that we have are homemade. So that is actually a picture that we want young people out there to actually believe in themselves and believe in homemade solution. So it's easier to go on social media and be attracted by, you know, what is in the outside world, but also believe in what you already have in your country is very, very important. So when we started our Rukundo Initiative, we started with our accelerator, so Innovation Accelerator Program, which is our main mentor in Imbuto Foundation in collaboration with UNFPA, Ministry of Youth and Koika Rwanda. And that is one of the UN agencies. We were so inspired of how non-governmental institution, governmental institution, and UN agencies come together. I liked how our theme says, partnering for a better and shared future for all, mean young people were included. And they believed in our potential and they sat and listened to us. And I think that is a very important thing that as young people we really appreciate when older and wiser people than us come and sit and listen to us. So homemade initiatives are important. We don't have to forget our culture and where we come from. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really, with that one, we really want to thank everybody here. We know that Rwanda will take UN seriously. Our president has been the chair of the Millennium Development Goals, the chair of the Broadband Commission. We participated in peacekeeping and we are playing a very leading role in that. And we know that in Rwanda, there is something that we have to take in terms of moving forward. The working unconventional way of doing things is very, very important for us. Innovation, you hear it many times, and homegrown solutions. Adapting to new changes is key. Also, creating resilience in so many sectors has become very important. The issue of gender equality is something that we keep on saying and working on to make sure that we have the equality that we need. We are also going to keep talking about the youth empowerment because they are the future. You cannot have a generation succeeding another generation without empowering the youth. It can't work. We are also very serious in terms of partnership, working with UN and all UN members as we move forward, addressing the issues of the day, because right now we are seeing that the whole world is interconnected and you have global issues that we need to work together. So partnership is going to become very important. So on this, I really thank our panelists who have been here. As we see that the gender equality is also happening here on the panel, and this has been very important. So we thank you so much for listening to us, for going beyond, I think, 1 hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much. We can give them another hand of applause, please. Thank you, Ambassador Gatete and his esteemed panelists. Let's quickly move to the second panel since we're a few minutes behind. The second panel is titled Rwanda's Contribution to United Nations Peacekeeping and Peacebuilding Efforts. It will be moderated by Ms. Belén Calvo Yara, who's Ambassador of the European Union to Rwanda. Ms. Yara serves as Ambassador to Rwanda since September of this year. She's committed to further deepen and expand the already strong partnership between the European Union and Rwanda, together with the excellent and dedicated team at the European Union delegation. Ambassador Belén Calvo Yara is a European Union public servant since 2001. She served in the European Commission as the Director General of Development before joining the EU External Action Service in the EU delegations to Nigeria and ECOWAS, Liberia, and South Africa. Between 2020 and 2022, she was detached to the cabinet of the Spanish Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation as Senior Advisor for Africa. She has worked over 20 years in Africa and with Africa, and she's eager to continue learning on this journey. Monsieur Oyara. Ambassador Oyara, do I let you introduce your panelists?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Floor is yours.
It really is a great honor and a pleasure to be here this morning and moderating this panel on the occasion of the celebrations of Rwanda's 60th anniversary in the UN. So I will be calling the panelists that will be joining me here this morning. It's a great a group of 4 panelists, all very experienced on peacekeeping and peace building in Rwanda, and I'm sure this is going to be a very stimulating debate. So I'm pleased to call the Brigadier General Jean-Baptiste Nguru-Wansanga, who is the head of peace support operations at the Rwanda Defense Force headquarters, who served as sector commander for the MINUSCA in the Central African Republic, and as chief of the Staff Ceasefire Commission for the African Union and UN hybrid operations in Darfur, Sudan, in 2 terms, 2013 and 2014, and previously in 2005 and 2007. So welcome. I'm also pleased to call on the panel Mrs. Baranga Gasarabge, who is just back from 7 years a tenure in Mali, where she served as the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General for MINUSMA, UN Resident Coordinator, and UNDP Resident Representative and Humanitarian Coordinator. Prior to this, she worked as the Assistant Secretary General for the Department of Safety and Security in New York, and she served in various senior capacities with the UNDP in Mali, Guinea, Djibouti, and Benin. She has a 30-year career at the UN and also worked previously with CEDA, World Bank, and USAID. Welcome to the panel. I'm also greeting Professor Phil Clark, who will be joining us online from London. He is Professor of International Politics at SOAS, University of London. He had written 2 books, one on distant justice, the impact of the International Criminal Court on African politics in 2018, and the Gatsata Courts, Post-Genocide Justice and Reconciliation in Rwanda, Justice Without Lawyers, in 2010. He's currently writing on welfare and inequality in post-genocide Rwanda. In 2014, Professor Clark established the Research Policy and Higher Education Program at the IDS Trust to support the Rwandan social science research community, and he will be joining us online later. And our 4th panelist is Ms. Diana Ofona, who is a senior advisor to the Minister of Local Government of Rwanda. And prior to this appointment, she worked as UNDP resident representative in Niger from 2019 to June 2022, where she also led the UNDP Niger's component of the stabilization strategy for the Sahel, the Lake Chad Basin, and Liptako-Gurma regions. She has also held several senior positions in the UN across the world, including here in Rwanda. She also has a 30-year work experience as leader and senior international development practitioner, and she's passionate about social transformation, and we will see it here today. So it's a great pleasure to welcome this panel here today. It is indeed very timely to reflect on peacekeeping and peace building on UN Day at a moment where the world is facing great challenges on global peace and security and evolving threats and crisis multipliers such as food security and climate change. And on these moments, we realize that we can always address these challenges together, upholding a rules-based international order based and anchored on the UN Charter that we are celebrating here today. So the panel this morning will highlight Rwanda's contribution to UN peacekeeping forces and more broadly, Rwanda's contribution to the holistic approach of peace building and the triple nexus of humanitarian development and peace. So we have very experienced voices that they're going to share peacekeeping, and peacekeeping is still today a vital tool for peace building. Minister Biruta reminded us that Rwanda is the 4th contributor to UN peacekeeping forces. It's mandated by its constitution to deploy peacekeeping and engage with communities, which is a rare and big value added. So based on your experience, Brigadier General, can you please share with us some reflections on the role of peacekeeping as a key contributor to peace building?
Thank you, Ambassador.
Keep pushing.
Sorry, if you allow, can I take the podium? Thank you so much. Good afternoon. If we are to talk about peacekeeping today, there are certain phrases or terminologies that ought to take in consideration. And first and foremost, if we talk of peacekeeping, we talk of protection of civilians, creation of a safe and conducive environment for all actors. That basically stands out in a mandate of peacekeeping. And on the other side is the integratedness and multidimensionalness of the environment under which we operate. In the process of peacekeeping, what do we do? What is our work? As I said, first and foremost is protection of civilians, effective prevention of the conflict, reduction of violence, strengthening security, and engage in all processes and activities geared towards peace building. I would like to say that peace building, as we commonly refer to as a post activity or endeavor, from the experience I've gone through in the recent past, it's clear that peace building is part and parcel of peacekeeping. Therefore, the two are in support of each other. After or with the improvement of the security situation, what do peacekeepers engage in fundamentally? What peacekeepers engage in has to do with mediation, reconciliation, dialogue within communities, monitor human rights violations, child protection, and all that is associated with the multidimensional nature of peacekeeping we are involved in. In my recent past, as a sector commander in the Central African Republic, we have had to do a lot in relation to peace building, considering that on the security aspect, we are at a period that we can say we are in a safe environment that can support peace building efforts. Therefore, as my question stands, the role of peacekeeping as a contributor to long-term peace building, I would rather rephrase it and say how much does peacekeeping contribute to peace building? And this will always be determined by how much you have been able to do in terms of creating the right environment for all actors. On the second part of my question, it has to do with Rwanda's peacekeeping work as relevant to peace building. when we talk of peace back here in Rwanda or peacekeeping, there are always vivid images that come across our minds. Just after the genocide in '94, the environment or the situation was that everybody, organizations, individuals were asking what happened, the why, and the how. To some, there were answers, to others, no answers. There are analysis, there are deductions and conclusions. But what was the choice of Rwanda? Rwanda's choice was we should be part and parcel of peacekeeping. That brings in a player, Rwanda, in peacekeeping, filled with the desire, the will, and commitment to the cause of protection of civilians. And wherever they have been deployed, they have won the trust and confidence of host communities, and rarely parties to the conflict. Hence, creating a conducive environment for other processes and activities to take place, plus peace building. Rwanda peacekeepers are involved in civic outreach activities and the provision of medical services, scholastic materials to children, sports equipment, and others. They also engage in QIPs, quick impact projects, beyond what is provided for by the mission from own meager resources. Construct classrooms, construct markets, etc. Rwandan peacekeepers share Rwanda homegrown solutions with host communities that include the famous economic cooking stove. That was a great contribution to Darfur, with the use of firewood, referred to as rondereza. Regular community work, referred to as umuganda, which has become very famous. And it has to do with the cleanliness, hygiene, tree planting, and environment. We're also looking at what we call akarima k'igikoni, where you have to grow vegetables on the smallest part of land available to you at home. So all these initiatives are intended to benefit, raise the hope of host communities, build the confidence and trust in the mission, subsequently creating a health condition for peace building. So as a summary, I would say peacekeeping is complementary with peace building, and we know as peacekeepers, at a given time, the mandate expires. From there, then the peace building processes do carry on. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brigadier General, for this presentation and for the choice of Rwanda and the commitment of Rwanda for peacekeeping and going a step further in engaging into creating peace-building conditions on the ground. So with this, I think I will move to our next panelist, Ms. Baranga Gasarabwe. And indeed, Rwanda's commitment to peace building also goes through, as the Brigadier General was saying, by sharing the homegrown solution, but always looking to solutions through dialogue and consensus, by bringing also women in key positions, in key decision-making situations, and by moving into the imperatives of national reconciliation. So with your experience in conflict countries, also can you share with us some of the elements of the uniqueness of Rwanda's approach to peace building?
Thank you very much. And thank you to be invited here. It's a fantastic journey to see Rwanda where we are today, and we have listened to the first panel. But let me just maybe before talking about Rwanda, rephrase a little bit, where are we today on peace building, and what does it mean anyway? We are here with ambassador representing many countries, and I just remind us that in June 1945, the UN Charter was signed. And the UN Charter was signed after the Second War. And just one word, we the people of United Nations determined to save succeeding generation from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. And we are determined to peace and security. That was 1945. Today, we are debating the war of Ukraine and Russia. So we just said, did we have time to think as all nation about what does mean peace and what does mean sustainable peace, and to not have a scourge of war and the sorrow we are experiencing today? In those words, I think wherever I've been, I was always reminding in UN Day that today, what does it mean really, UN and the nation and the peace? The UN Secretary General Boutros Ghali in 1992 established Agenda for Peace. And that report was, one of the reports was talking about preventive diplomacy, peacemaking, peace building, and later on we talk about peacekeeping, because we find that the preventive diplomacy, peacemaking, negotiation, mediation was not working. At that time in the 90s, we were experiencing so many wars around the world. You remember the Balkans, East Timor, and all in Africa, most of Liberia, Sierra Leone, establishment of peacekeeping in Africa. And we went on Central African Republic, we went on Congo. And today we still have some peacekeepings, which is maybe established since maybe 20 years ago. So that means something is missing in peace building. Did you not talk about peacekeeping in the wars of Rwanda example? In those 90s, there's so many interesting examples. When I was working in Guinea, I remember I was talking about Liberia and Sierra Leone war. And we tried to look at all these wars, and we tried to see either peacekeeping or conflict which is not ending, what are the common cause or the causes in each country. And we find out that most of causes are different. from different countries. And one of them, I think we go beyond and we look at inside and deeply on the history of a country. We look at the culture of a country. We look at what the main priority of that country can be: religion diversity, can be ethnicity, can be regionalization, can be socio-economic natural resources which are not disturbed equally. So those are some of the cause roots which we look at different countries we have been in, and we look at also how sometimes the discussion and dialogue is always there. The community are debating, the national authority are debating, but what fails to the point that we bring at Security Council the debate of peacekeeping. I'll give you two examples. I've been in Guinea and Mali. Guinea has been a worse crisis, conflict, but one uniqueness I saw before coming to Rwanda, uniqueness, is that when we were thinking that we need peacekeeping because this is not going anywhere, we have lost many people, 4 regions, each region has a leader. They went together. They have a national dialogue. The 4 leaders have talked. The UN helped for that what we call the Caravane de la Paix. Along all this, to bring all together national debate, what is wrong with us? And at least really, this uniqueness of region, this uniqueness of leaders of region and the community has brought to avoid peacekeeping. We went now to the other countries like Mali, where I've been, before the peacekeeping and after peacekeeping. I saw that when I was living in Guinea, it's unique that sometimes you can ask you, which country would you like to work in? I say, no, close the door, Mali. Because it was a country which has a diversity. Unbelievable. You have an Arab, you have a Tuareg, you have a Pearl, you have so many diversity. But they lived together for years. But however, there was one in the north which said, no, we are not feeling the richness of this country. And they started separating. And the stabilization mission was coming, as MINUSMA is called, stabilization, to try to put people together, not having like this separation. But then, second debate and second challenge was what we call terrorism. What does mean terrorism, by the way? We find that defining this destabilization of terrorism, most of people were very poor in some places. You can give $1 to a young guy, he will put a mine on the road. And when you pass by, you just explode. And we find that small community were starting getting, I am this, I am that, I am that. And putting this nation together was a problematic. I went to Kosovo. Kosovo, in the Balkan, you know what happened over there, and what they hate, the speech, the hate speech, remember, the youth, the women, those solutions were brought also through those. The media, the youth, the women were the solution, but part of also the root cause was different. So we can go on and on in different countries, but I come back now, why I give you this preamble, is because what we are asked, what's the peace building and the uniqueness in Rwanda? Can it be repeated elsewhere? I may say, I think the previous panel, I'm not going to go back again to what the panel said on home ground solution, but I think they show us when Rwandans get together of the genocide, and when they get this big meeting, I remember, and they came up with these 3 solutions, they went back inner, what we call inner culture, what we call the history of this country. By the way, before colonization, where were we? What Rwanda was meaning? We have a rich culture. We're now going to go back to those words. And when we talk Agaciro, it's fantastic because it's dignity. It means that everybody has to have that dignity in yourself. And when you build yourself as a person who has a dignity, then you can move mountains, even though you have been wounded. Secondly, I think the policy policy comes, the sound policies comes up to that vision and the leadership. If we didn't have that, if we didn't have people who sound, where do we have to go? And these sound policies were around the people-centered, community-centered, because you are a leader, you have your government, but you have a community. And those community, they are the one who had machete. They are the one who killed each other. So I think there's a sound policy up and down. How do we meet together? Third, after the sound policy, you can have the best policies, implementation. How do you implement? Are they going to be the central power or the grassroots which is going to implement? And how do you find those two, that the money you have given to that grassroots level to implement those projects, how is going to be? The how is the key, because that's where you have policies without corruption, zero corruption. And I think we still witness those policies. And last, I think when the community is doing everything, we still have poor people, we still have a struggle, and I think it has been seen in the statistics. It's consistent follow-up and implementation of those policies. And that means, again, the governance. The governance, we define it different ways, national governance, local governance, whatever you call it. But this consistency is the key of peace building. And I think the last word that we say, which remind me the UN Secretary General Hamajok, who passed away some years ago in the 60s. He says something, say, yes, building peace is not one size fits all. It's not a straitjacket, is that each country will find its way, its own solution, if you are serious to implement it. So I will conclude saying that Rwanda's uniqueness, in my view, is again, you choose to be who you are, going grounded on inner solution from yourself. I remember Ambassador Gatete said it. I remember coming here when Rwanda was challenged with own security, and even the partners saying, no, we cannot put money on security, and this military guy is what's gonna be. But that vision of securing the country is the solution today when you see all these conferences being done in Rwanda, because we are safe. Because in a country level, you feel safe. In what General said, you feel protected. The trust of trusting that the policeman, the military guy who's around you is protecting you. Because one of the biggest challenge still going on now in peacekeeping, protection of civilian. And I do think now, once we conclude on this, peacekeeping should be a mechanism of momentum, should not be the last solution. Peace building is the peace which is sustained. So you just come, you help people, you leave. When you are standing for 10, 20, 30 years, you are failing. Something is wrong in your governance, something is wrong in your policies, something is wrong in your implementation, something is wrong with your accountability to your people. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Just perhaps a follow-up question on this. So in your experience in Mali, in the Sahel region, in other countries, have you shared the Rwanda uniqueness, the choice of being who you are, and what has been the engagement you've had?
Fantastic to say so. Again, Ambassador Gatete knows that Rwanda came to peacekeeping in Mali. It was a part of the peacekeeping. When Rwanda police was established in Gao, I was there. I was in New York, but I was following because I was Assistant Secretary General for Global Security in all countries in the world. And I was following Mali because I left Mali in 2011. I went to New York, and I was really sad to see that a country which was stable, maintaining its peace, living together with this diversity, has fun, and we have peacekeeping. Because to me, having peacekeeping really is failing in how you build your peace. So what to just say, when we had this speaking, it was a unique experience in Gao protecting civilians. But we have a weakness in UN peacekeeping. I think the general has said it. There is a chapter saying, if some people come, don't shoot. People came, many, just attacking our compound where the Rwandese were there. And of course, they were protecting the population and they were protecting also. They shoot up just to dissuade people. But what happened later, I think was really kind of feeling, I remember, there was a lot of say about what happened at that incident and why we should give back. So unfortunately, wrong story. Rwanda police were withdrawn and we came back here. But people will never forget. People, because it was protection of civilians. Don't shoot, but you need some time to dissuade because you need protecting people. I think General can say a lot, where we are still failing protecting civilians. How do you protect civilians? Do we have to be proactive and protect people, or shall we just say this like this? When people are dead, we come back and say, oh, there was a report of 10 people who passed away. There was a report of this. By the way, ending on that, on peace building also, is a matter of combining two issues. We talk about protecting civilians, but we talk also about combination of humanitarian development and peace and security. To work in a mission and to combine those three elements is not easy. I remember being a resident coordinator and being deputy SRG. It's not really a big challenge because sometimes you want to go in a place when there's no access, when there is a lot of danger, and you say, go. And some NGOs will say, no, we cannot go because we don't want to be close to security guys. We will just debate, mediate, but we don't be to associate with you. But people are dying. So in this world, I think there's a mechanism we still have which have to be reviewed, but in a say, I think is a multi-dimensional approach, is something we should just continue to work on. By the way, concluding, I really have again to say congratulations to Rwanda because I visited Nyakinama. For people who have not been in Nyakinama, please visit Nyakinama because it has an approach of peacekeeping and peace building. And the approach is fantastic. And we have had also many people being from Mali, coming here, learning, coming back. So it's a learning journey, but I do think, as we say, home ground initiative, also on peace and security, there are a lot which has been also dispersed and provided to others. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we're going to move to Professor Phil, who is now joined us, and I can see him in the screens in front of me. I'm not sure you can also see him. But Professor Phil Clark has been working on the Great Lakes region and has been looking also at the impact of the militias on human security and on economic development in the whole region, and has been also working on international and national community responses to these mass atrocities. So I would be very happy if you can please share with us some of the findings in your research.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you so much to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and also to UN Rwanda for this very kind invitation. I apologize that I can't be with you there in the room. I'm just checking that you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. In many ways, I really want to echo what Ms. Gasarabwe just shared with us. I think much of what I want to impart here really resonates with things that she also said. I think if we look at the Great Lakes experience of mass conflict over the last 20 or 30 years, there's of course been a very heavy emphasis on responding to violence from the top down. Much discussion has been centered on international peacekeeping, international peace building efforts, elite peace negotiations, international prosecutions, even very important things like a regional economic integration, I think is a very important part of responding to mass violence. But I want to pick up on something that Ms. Gasarabwe mentioned, which is the importance of community-level actors in addressing mass violence across the region. I think there's a huge amount of untapped potential still at the grassroots level, at the community level in the Great Lakes. And I want to emphasize two aspects of this that perhaps hasn't had enough emphasis over time. The first is that if we look at civil society in countries like Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, Burundi, there's clearly an enormous amount of civil society activity towards peace happening within those national domains. Burundian civil society being very active in Burundi, Rwandan civil society being very active within Rwanda. But I think what we're perhaps not seeing enough of is a regional civil society platform, sharing lessons, engaging with one another, community-based organizations crossing borders to speak to their counterparts in neighboring states, youth groups, religious groups. I would include my own guild, my own area of academics and university researchers, connecting with one another in a regional sense to deal with the conflicts happening in the Great Lakes at the moment. I think this is a realm that has not had enough activity, enough funding, enough focus. There's a real need for cross-border dialogues, the sharing of knowledge and insights across national borders. I think what we see at that level is civil society getting to grips with the fact that many of them, in fact, are dealing with common concerns, that many of the causes of the conflicts that they are dealing with in an isolated sense, in fact, have common causes and potentially common remedies. This is a vital level of peace building below the level of elite top-down international and national engagement. And so I think that's a question for civil society actors. It's also a question for funders, which is why have we not seen enough of this civil society activity happening in a regional sense? Why has so much of it been relegated within national borders? The second aspect of thinking about community responses to violence across the Great Lakes is, of course, to recognize that there is so much dialogue, conflict resolution, and reconciliation happening within community-based mechanisms in places like Rwanda, Congo, Burundi, and Uganda already. I'm thinking here, of course, things like Gacaca in Rwanda. I'm thinking of various community-based rituals in various parts of northern Uganda, where I've also been working for the last 20 years. Practices like Hakiniyamani, a very important cross-community dialogue institution in Ituri province in Congo. These are important dialogue and reconciliation spaces, often led by customary, traditional, and other local leaders. But again, they tend to be isolated within their specific communities within the particular states of the Great Lakes. And many of the actors involved in those processes, in my research, say what would be invaluable to us would be to learn from our counterparts across the border. It would be for traditional leaders in Ituri to know more about what's happening in northern Uganda and to create a regional dialogue across those borders. I think they have a lot in common, but in fact could bolster their very important work by knowing more about what's happening in the wider region. So these are two levels, civil society, but also community reconciliation. I think this is a realm where, to be honest, governments need to stay aloof from these processes. These practices work best when, in fact, they are led by civil society, when they are led from the community. The minute governments get involved, it changes the nature of those two levels. But there is undoubtedly a role for facilitators and for funders in making the most of this regional capital that is there that I think is not being sufficiently tapped at the moment. So that's an aspect of the peace building picture in the Great Lakes that I feel we need to talk more about. Thanks.
Up, I mean, yeah, as a follow-up.
Sorry, I just lost it. Yeah, you're back. Sorry, Ambassador. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, you were talking about transitional justice mechanism at community level also, and which is also an essential component on justice, on peacekeeping, but also on conflict prevention. So what is in your research, what are your findings in terms of the outcome of the transitional justice process that they can be brought forward into new experiences?
Yeah, great. I think this is useful because it shifts from a peace building focus to a transitional justice focus. And I think the Rwandan experience of transitional justice has an enormous amount to teach the rest of the continent and even further afield. And in 3 minutes, with your permission, Ambassador, I'd like to summarize 3 key lessons that I think we can take from Rwanda's experience of transitional justice, particularly with an emphasis on transitional justice having lasting benefits for the societies in question. I would say the 3 lessons are as follows. The first one is a lesson very much from Rwanda's experience of Gacaca, which is that transitional justice has to be visible, it has to be proximate, and it has to be felt by everyday people. And I think this has been a shortcoming in many international tribunals and even in many national truth commissions, is that they have often become very distant and very detached from everyday people. Part of the success of the Gacaca experience in Rwanda, and I've written about this extensively, and I do frame Gacaca very much as a success. It had imperfections and problems, but I think on par, it very much was an important basis for reconciliation in Rwanda. So much of that was because it was an intimate process that everyday people participated in village by village for 10 years. They felt part of it. They experienced it. It was part of their day-to-day life. It was justice that they could touch. And I think that there's something deep in that approach to justice that was important in Rwanda, but that is a lesson for transitional justice mechanisms all around the world. And I think international courts and tribunals in particular have a lot to learn from the intimacy of justice that we saw through Gacaca. The second lesson that I think Rwanda imparts globally is that transitional justice also has to contain a socioeconomic and a material component. That if justice is to be meaningful, if there is to be meaningful redress for massive crimes, it has to tackle this important material, socioeconomic, transformational component. And if it doesn't, it often, in my experience, tends to be seen as insufficient by everyday people. And I think in my experience in Rwanda, this is the genius of having not just Gacaca, but at the same time, the government pushing Ubudehe, the socioeconomic transformation, the welfare structure, in concert with the prosecutions that were happening through Gacaca. And one thing that comes through very strongly in my own research is people saying, what made such a difference to us after the genocide against the Tutsi? What made us believe that a new Rwanda was possible? What made us believe that something like reconciliation wasn't just an abstract term? Was that we could see our material life changing, that we could see issues of socioeconomic inequality being addressed, that families and communities that used to be preferenced in the past were no longer being preferenced in terms of access to healthcare, access to scholarships, access to educational opportunities. It convinced us that this government was serious about creating a new dispensation and that something like reconciliation had something tangible at its essence. And so the lesson there, I think, for societies around the world grasping the transitional justice challenge is that if this is only about prosecutions, if it's only about truth-telling and it doesn't change people's day-to-day material life, it's probably not going to go far enough. And I think tackling inequality at a socioeconomic level has to be part of transitional justice. And I think Rwanda's experience with both Gacaca and Ubudehe is important in that sense. The third and final lesson that I think Rwanda imparts in transitional justice terms is that transitional justice is always ongoing, that it's never just about these set piece moments or set piece institutions like Gacaca. It's a process of dealing with the past, of trying to lay a foundation for reconciliation that, to be honest, never ends. And I think that one way that Rwanda has had to think about this challenge was during the period of COVID. And I spent 5-6 months in Rwanda at the height of the pandemic. And one of the things that I think was happening was that many of the gains of Gacaca and Ubudehe were being directly challenged because of the pressures of the pandemic. that much of the long-term work that Rwanda had done in a justice sense, in a welfare sense, in fact, was being directly challenged by this shock of COVID that nobody could have seen coming. And yes, we've seen a range of mechanisms and a range of responses to try to address that, but I think it is a scenario that Rwanda is still dealing with today. That the long-term benefits of things like Gacaca and Ubudehe confronted a challenge that nobody expected. And I think what that shows is that this is an iterative process. It's an ongoing process. Nobody can ever get complacent that a system like Gacaca has done its job and everything's over. Of course, it's not. It's a perpetual process of transitional justice and dealing with the legacies of the past in light of new challenges, many of which can't be predicted. So I think that's a current challenge that Rwanda is going through, and I think it's relevant for many other parts of the world as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. That's the day-to-day and the daily work moving towards transitional justice and reconciliation and moving forward. And this was also an excellent bridge with the previous panel that discussed also sustainable development in the country and the work towards building and bridging these inequalities. So with this, I'm going to move to our fourth panelist, this is Diana Fuona, and looking also at new approaches to crisis prevention, stabilization, and long-term recovery, which is also a broad title. But it's true that at a time we're facing new threats and that we are seeing that the impact of the war in Ukraine has consequences into the daily lives of people around the world. We are somehow tested in our systems and we look at how we are doing things. So in your experience, what is here to learn in terms of the current approaches and methods, and what the UN and the international community can do differently in responding more effectively to both traditional and non-traditional threats?
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, standing on existing protocols, let me first of all start by wishing happy 60th anniversary to Rwanda in the UN. It's a beautiful place to be. It somehow coincides with my birthday, so my birthday.
Happy birthday.
My birthday is not today, but the age coincides. So I'm one of those women who's very brave in telling their age. So thank you very much. One of the beauties of speaking last is that everything has been said, and I can actually just summarize and pick the brains of what has been said before. And I think I will start with something that struck me when my sister Mbaranga spoke, is that in the first place, to have peacekeeping and peace-building initiatives, it's symptomatic of development failures. If in 1945, we were speaking of peace building, and if today we're speaking of it, and in fact, in more complex contexts, then there's something in the middle that is not right. And maybe based on everything that has been said today, I will pick probably 3 things that perhaps need to change. And once again, benefiting from having listened to the others. I'm very glad you put me last, Ambassador. Thank you. I think the first is predictive analysis. You know, in certain cases, we see it coming, and then we are surprised. And indeed, there's very little predictive analysis happening, and even where it does happen, we don't often benefit or use the intelligence thereof. And 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda is a case in point. We need to invest a little bit more on that, a little bit more on, you know, preventing conflict rather than fighting the fires afterwards. I think another thing that has come up and we should probably do differently in responding to the crisis and conflict today, and which have become so much more complex, is avoiding a siloed, sequential approach to dealing with them. You know, it's not a question of first let us sort out the humanitarian pieces of it, and then we go and look at what we do in between in terms of long-term development. It will not work. We're racing against time. We're racing against complexities, and I'm talking also about health pandemics. You know, there are times when you have to move really, really fast, and we have to have a whole of society approach in the way we handle some of these problems that come up. This disconnect and dichotomy between humanitarian, peace building, stabilization, development no longer holds water. It's not a competition one against the other, but it is actually working in tandem to ensure that we talk about the protection of civilians in the unfortunate event that conflict does spill over, and we are seeing that they're cyclic, they're actually coming back. We also look at, and it has been mentioned, the whole issue of stabilization. You know, that bridge in between violent conflict and long-term development, when there's a little lull, but there's still lingering humanitarian issues to be solved, and yet we're not quite there for long-term development. And so we really have to be flexible to adapt to what the context is, and be willing to put in all our resources, technical, financial, and otherwise, to have a holistic, more, you know, nexus approach to the way we deal with conflict. I think another issue would be the fallacy of, and I think Phil, you spoke to this, of trying to solve long-term structural issues, problems, with short-term solutions. You know, it's like band-aiding. You know, okay, there's a conflict, quickly, let's gather up, you know, do a little bit of peace building, peacekeeping. Before that's up, you know, probably money runs out, or, you know, let's just, you know, do some quick fixes. We're in for the long haul. We're in, first of all, to try and avoid conflict in the first place. And where it is inevitable, look at the whole spectrum, the whole continuum, and ensure that while we build peace, we also support countries to have a sustainable blueprint for long-term development, to avoid slipping back into conflict, but more importantly, to have the beautiful story that we see here in Rwanda. The naysayers at that time in 1994 would have said this is a basket case. There's no way you can dream. I mean, it was such a pipe dream to imagine Rwanda as it is today. And I'm saying this with all modesty, being a Rwandan myself. So it's important that while we do support countries get out of conflict and crisis, that we do at the same time put blueprints for long-term sustainable development, and thank you very much, ensuring the participation of people at the local level. There's no transformation that has ever happened without the people at the local level, because that's the heartbeat of society. On the second question, with regard to, so in a nutshell, invest in predictive analysis, ensure that we adopt this holistic, whole of society approach, be adaptable and open to new ideas, bridging the gap between crisis and long-term development through initiatives such as stabilization. And if we had a lot more time, we would be able to talk about it. But basically a three-pronged approach that looks at deepening security, it's very important, infrastructural development, rebuilding, and giving livelihoods to people, because that's very, very important when they go back. And that being the sort of, when you leave ICU, you get to HDU before you come to, the general ward and out to long-term development. On your question of funding, which I'm preempting, by the way, because yes, I think it just flows naturally. And I don't know how to say this diplomatically, but I will say it anyway. Crisis response is more expensive than preventing it. If my figures still serve me well, I think when my last duty station was UNDP resident representative in Niger, in the Sahel, where we worked a lot on combating extremism, violent extremism. It was not easy. But an average peacekeeping mission in Africa costs $900 million US. Now it's 1.5, my goodness. And of course, combined, you can imagine, these operations are usually long-term and run in the billions. While they're inevitable in certain cases, just imagine if this amount of money was turned and channeled and refunneled to long-term sustainable development options. My last point would be the fact that Africa is resource rich. A lot more can be done about how we redistribute, how we exploit our own resources, how we add value, and how we will fasten and quicken the pace to which we will enter and make much more use of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We need to ensure that the financing that is dwindling, that is really not coming in as much as it should, and why should it anyway, is used as a spark for long-term development, and we use the resources that we have to generate much more and bigger, and of course, as we said, much more ambitious projects for Africa's development. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot on that. And perhaps just a couple of questions and follow up. One, it's on the sequence or non-sequence, but complementarity between the different pillars of between the different elements of the nexus. That resonates very well with the work that the European Union that I represent is doing together with the UN in order precisely to build full complementarity and not a sequence approach that would allow us to tackle better with the longer term sustainable development in mind. So that resonates well. I wanted to point out on that. I had one additional question in regards to the new agenda for peace, where there's a shift of mind from crisis response to better anticipation and from translating from the early warning into the early action. How would you see that happening based on the predictable analysis that you were doing, moving from the analysis, from the wording into the action?
Could we do 5 more minutes here and then open the floor?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Maybe very quickly, that is actually already happening, and I think I mentioned stabilization, which does begin actually with a lot of predictive analysis. So this whole area of data research and conflict analysis is something we need to invest in. And it is a new approach. Of course, it's being tested. The proof of concept is already working. And this is an area where we need to look at how do we use that intelligence that we get, they're usually indicators that a conflict is coming up. It's usually indicators, as you can tell. Investment, as she said, in dialogue, in peace dialogues, investments in listening to the people, you know, once again at local level. How often do we go around before we develop our initiatives to actually listen to what the people want, to dialogue with them, to support them in articulating a better and more ambitious development trajectory for themselves? There are simple things that can be done that actually stump or nip in the bud this early, this pathway to conflict, and would indeed be a great investment. Sometimes takes a lot of time, but trust me, prevention is better than cure. And in other words, but cheaper actually than cure. So I really push for that. I push for where possible. In some places, it's absolutely not possible. The issues are really deep. But where it is, it's important that the investment be rather in trying to dialogue, bring peace, analyze, and support people to move from conflict to development. Thank you.
So thank you very much, and perhaps it's a small moment for reflection on the European Union is indeed fully committed behind the UN in this peacekeeping and also in this longer term approach, and we remain together with the EU member states on present here, a key contributor for peacekeeping operations, but also on development. So yes, the small element on what we're doing on our side. But I think with this, and I look at our MC, we can open the floor for questions. So I think we would have time for a couple of questions from the floor.
Let's take about 3 questions from the floor, answer them at the same time. Raise your hand, there's a microphone going around, there's a couple of them actually. Do we have a question? Maybe a comment? Do we have a question? Yes? Left side of the room. Anybody? No? Well, I think we take 5 minutes to conclude, and then thank you.
Yeah, perhaps I had a question. It has not been raised. It was raised in the previous panel, which was the woman, peace and security element, where Rwanda is also keen and leading. And perhaps I will leave you a moment to respond to this, and then we will take 1 minute for every one of the panelists, just perhaps on concluding remarks. Thank you. Yes.
If there was more time, I will challenge the audience here and ask question, why are we still have a conflict? Once we have agenda for peace, once everybody has agreed to the preventive diplomacy, peacemaking, and the peace building, are we shy? Probably the nation are shy today to not using the preventive diplomacy. And I was also asking myself, it's this adjustment to the new world, the new order, and maybe I will challenge the ambassador Gatete, who's now in New York, and Mrs. Ojembo, who's there, who are assisting the last UNGA, and think that even in the Security Council we have established, and which is supposed to deal with the peace and security, the war, are we going to have a new order? Are we going to have a new war? Are we going to have a what? Why are we failing and consistently failing on peacemaking and peace building? Anybody can, the diplomat and everybody, I'm really challenging you, but challenging myself because I don't have a solution. Why? Why is it happening? Is it humankind?
Yes, certainly the use of force should have no place in the 21st century. But I think the Ambassador Gatete wanted to, I don't know whether to take the challenge.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Actually, we gave a formula. We said we should not do it in an ad hoc manner because it should not be competing with resources. Sometimes there is money, sometimes there is less money, sometimes there is no money in terms of this area. And you find they are really struggling. And we said, no, we need to come up with really a sustainable way so that you don't have to go and beg the countries to contribute to peace building. So what we did was, really now we seem to be in agreement because once there is no peace, the cost is very high. UN pays the resources for the peacekeeping. The bilaterals will come and intervene. The UN humanitarian assistance increases. And also you find that everybody is paying up. So the cost is very, very high. It's not only the peacekeeping, but also rebuilding after a big cost is very, very expensive. So what we did was we should focus on peace building and we should create a fund for that. We actually gave a formula of how even we can raise an endowment fund so that you can get regional resources. So sometimes, for example, if you go to resources and invest, and then the proceeds of that will be able to be the starting point. Saying it is giving me, for example, the proceeds is 200 million, at least I have that money guaranteed. I can now mobilize on top of that more money on peace building so that you can do an assessment, intervene ahead of time, and make sure that you prevent that conflict from happening. That's a debate that we are really holding, which we think that is very important. Then the second day, we also looked at peacekeeping. How is it? Because this was established when the UN was established. That's the way it is. And in most cases, there are issues it doesn't solve. Because you need a combination, and we've seen it in the Central African Republic, I think General has mentioned it, where you have a combination of a force that can do the intervention and also a force that can protect the civilians. So that way, that kind of combination helps in terms of actually addressing the issues. Because the peacekeeping also by the rule, they have a restriction on how much they can do. And also the intervention becomes also very useful. There is also a debate on that. And also looking at what has happened in Central African Republic and what has happened in Mozambique with our force going there to really address the issue in a quick manner. No debates, not too much debates, but that it intervenes, solves the problem, and then it is followed by actually helping the country to continue. So there is that debate of saying, what do we do with the peacekeeping operation now? Is it really the best that we can have? Can it be complemented by something else? So that's also the debate that is also taking place. So the issue of prevention is becoming more and more important, and you need assured resources. This time we had assessed contribution by each country paying according to how rich you are, but we want to make sure that we create a fund that is assured, where we can do it properly, assess it, and also as permanent representatives, we supervise how it is being done, and so that we can now prevent the conflict and reduce the number of peacekeeping operations that we have at the moment. So that's what I can say on this one. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Ambassador. I see that the PS also want to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's been very insightful to listen to the panelists and my dear sisters here. So I represent an organization called the UN Global Compact, and it works towards bringing private sector engaged in all of society issues that you've mentioned. So I'm very keen just to hear briefly from you where you see the role of private sector can be in issues such as peace building and stabilization, if we are looking truly at that whole of society approach. Very interested in your views. Thank you.
So I look to our MC, and would we have time?
Oh, there's one more question. We have one
okay,
more.
So we take one more question, and then we open a one minute response from the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief, but coming directly to the question or the challenge posed by Ms. Gasarabwe, firstly, I'm pleased that you made mention of Secretary General Boutros Ghali's Agenda for Peace, and within it, the role of preventive diplomacy. And what I want to say, as a view, which may be provocative in a sense, is that we probably also have to look at the nexus between diplomacy and politics and the workings of politics. If we understand the role of diplomacy and what it was meant to be, and the role that it's supposed to occupy, and whether it is being given that role and that space to be able to play the kind of role that I think it was historically meant to play, is perhaps one of the problems that we are dealing with, because diplomats, by the nature of the work that they have to do, they tend to see things that perhaps their governments may not necessarily see as quickly and as easily as they do, because of the nature of their work, because of the nature of their interactions. So I think that that's perhaps one of the issues that needs to be looked at in the way our world is working, is whether we still give an appropriate place, to the role of diplomacy and the role of diplomats. And when we look at even some of the current conflicts, even if you're speaking the Russia-Ukraine war, you listen to some of the former ambassadors or current ambassadors, one way or the other, their insights, into what we are currently witnessing. If those had been listened to, perhaps this is something that could have been prevented. So I just want to raise that as perhaps one of the major shortcomings in the international arena today. Thank you very much.
So I think the intervention of Ambassador Gatete that brought us to the conversation in New York, and I think for the two questions on the Global Compact, link private-public into the work on peace building and the High Commissioner on the new nexus on diplomacy and politics that is added to this. And with this, I would like to give the floor to each of the panelists for 1 minute each response to these questions and your final remarks. And I will start the other way around. So Ms. Diana, if you want to comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I couldn't have agreed better with Ambassador Gatete. And maybe very quickly to respond to the question of my sister. Nice to see you here. Yes, from the Global Compact. You know better than all of us how important the private sector is in times of peace, in times of war. It is not always evident that the ecosystem that is there for private sector to thrive exists, and more so in countries of conflict. Yet, the private sector's role is so pivotal in ensuring not only growth, economic growth, but also in providing opportunities. You know, it's like a vicious circle. If you look at the Sahel and what caused many of the youth to subscribe into violent extremism is because they could not get jobs. When the stabilization initiative began and the houses were being rebuilt for those who had lost their houses to Boko Haram, the displaced to Boko Haram, and they were coming back, it was the private sector that was working with local government to rebuild those houses, to rebuild the schools and the hospitals. And what they did is they employed these unemployed youth to be part of the process of rebuilding, even those who returned from Boko Haram and gave back their arms. I cannot see a society or a rebuilding process, a reconstruction process that happens outside the private sector. But there is a fundamental basic principle to provide that environment for private sector to thrive. And I think in the blueprints for recovery and reconstruction, this is something that we must really emphasize. Lastly, for those private sector that are there and that are thriving, don't forget that component of CSR, which is extremely important. And it really, really goes a long way in helping people in very many different ways. That would be my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Phil?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Let me also just say something brief about the private secretary's questions there are coming from the Global Compact. Look, I think everything that we've been talking about, peace building and transitional justice, has to include the private sector at its heart. I would say in 2 key respects. The first one is, I think sometimes the business community itself needs to be more honest about the role that it's often played in conflict. It's benefiting from conflict, sometimes mobilizing conflict. There are often material and economic drivers of conflict, and sometimes the private sector itself has been part of the problem there. And I think we're talking at the moment about a region where that is absolutely central. So I think we need some honesty first about the role, sometimes the problematic role that the private sector has played in that regard. And then secondly, looking to the future, so much of what we've talked about today is how important the redistribution of resources is for peace building and transitional justice. And I think the private sector itself has to take on this mantle of the just redistribution of resources as a way to deal with the challenges of peace building. Issues of taxation are part of transitional justice. Questions of employment, equitable employment is a transitional justice issue. Work conditions are a transitional justice issue. Housing and infrastructure are all transitional justice issues because they are about tackling inequality and changing the structures of society, many of which perpetuated conflict in the past. I'm an Australian who's married to a South African, and I would say that our 2 societies have failed on this question of the private sector's role in peace building and transitional justice. I think in our 2 societies, the private sector has wanted to get on as though it's business as usual, not realizing that they've been part of the problem. They were central to apartheid in South Africa. The business community is absolutely central to unequal relations between black and white Australians. The private sector has not come to terms in either South Africa or Australia with its responsibilities and the way that it needs to change its practices. And until they change their practices, we will continue to see the inequality between different groups in society that potentially leads to further conflict in the future. So I think we can look at South Africa and Australia and see why we have to have this conversation about the private sector and the business community playing a much more central role in all of these issues around peace and transitional justice.
Thank you very much, Ambarangwa.
Ambassador, thank you very much to come back again to this preventive diplomacy attention. I think it's really sound, and I think UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, has talked a lot about this. Ambassador Gatete said about this, so and they've been following it. I think it's really crucial we go back to that agenda for peace and look at really how this three-dimension, preventive diplomacy, peacemaking, mediation, and peace building, which is combining these three dimensions we saw about justice, rule of law, development, humanitarian, and peace and security, cannot be working in silo. It has to be together. And I think it has been emphasized, but we need also the community of donors community to listen to what the state is saying and work together. This is the partnership now. I thank you very much, Ojambo, Sister Jambo. I have been following what you have done in the UN Compact, fantastic. It's bringing these companies, private companies, big one, but work also in some of the developing countries around the SDGs, and look at how everything can be brought as in your goal. And I can tell you, any country, even in crisis, even the deep crisis, you need to feed people. You need to give water. You need energy. You need everything is just said. And that's who can bringing this is the private sector working closely with the public sector, with civil society, with everybody to contribute to that. Because the wealth. And I just give an example. When I was facing 200,000 refugees in Guinea, when there was a war in Liberia and Sierra Leone, we used a company, Canadian company, a mining company, on social justice, on social protection. We involve them, we say, you cannot have this wealth in your hand and you are not involving in social activities. And we managed to have some fund which was channeled through UN to give some of incentive, and working with women and youth is possible. I'm working recently now to Georgetown University, which is on women and security, and also Health International Business School. Is really they understood that the global affairs through Dubai, which I'm working with on that, they have established a campus when the MBA student are working on these rural areas, very remote control in conflict situation. When they graduate, they will understand how they go back and work in those environments, because they will gain money anyway. So I think this, any field, either conflict, either normal country, either wherever, you always have business. You always really, people have to continue to work. And I do think that this combination of, again, not in silo, but working together, and academia, you have brought very much private sector company become, but academia also is very good because you are bringing those ones who are young, vibrant, and digital era, and really to work on ones. And I think Youth Connected shows also that there is a vibrant, amazing, potential entrepreneurship which aims to UN Compact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Brigadier General.
Thank you so much. I'll talk a bit on the peacekeeping and change. And I'm worried sometimes change doesn't come easy. And when it comes to the UN, it's really pretty difficult. And I think even in the nature and the form in which we are as the UN, when we design these peace missions, I think we can do more. I talk as somebody on the grassroots. I've been talking about the grassroots. I'm involved in at the tactical levels. The experience is that recently, when we went to CAR, the situation between the peacekeepers and or the mission and the local populace was really very hostile, very hostile. And why was it hostile? Actually, the mission was sort of inert. And it was realized at all levels, I think up to the UN headquarters. When there was change of leadership all the way from the top, yeah, there was something in form of a change on how best we are operating. We are requested at the lowest level of the sector command, together with the contingents, to design operation plans to be able to tackle areas of concern, security concerns, areas of hotspot, identified them, identified required capabilities and resources, not limited to the sector, but looking at the mission in general, mobilize all available resources, and then deal with those identified areas of security concern and areas of we consider hotspots. And for the last 5-6 months, the whole image of MINUSCA has really changed. When you see what the local populace says about MINUSCA is quite different from when I last reached there and when I was living with the new leadership in place. So as we wait for that change, we should be able, through the leadership, try all possible ways and means to make sure that at least we do something in relation to the implementation of the mandate as given, or else we shall keep waiting for the change, and I don't know when it will be coming. At one time, I had a problem where I was operating. We had what we call the way we operate, from the main operating base to the permanent operating base to temporary operating base. The concept of having a temporary operating base is to give you the ability to be flexible, the ability to be agile, move it whenever necessary. But we had TOBs, and they are limited in time. They had to, these are tactical bases that operate not more than 3 months. But I had more than 4 tactical bases, temporary operating bases, that have lived for more than 3 years. So, what does it mean? You are no longer flexible. You can't operate because all your forces are fixed. And worse still, they are vulnerable because they can't provide the required force protection. This was requested to pull back these temporary operating bases. Since I arrived there, I have left. It's a year. They are still there. So what I'm trying to highlight is that change we are looking for. When is it coming? So if it is not coming, we should be able to do something in the state in which we are. And it can be done from what I saw. A year I spent in Car. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, Thank you very much for the panel. It was a great privilege to be here with you today. There were lots of strong positions that they were shared and strong messages that they were conveyed. We can see that true partnerships are built not on word but on deeds, and we can see Rwanda's commitment to working together with the UN on peacekeeping, but also more broadly on enhances this triple nexus on peace, security, and development. We heard about new nexus and the importance of politics and diplomacy also in prevention. And we heard about transitional justice and the importance of the intimacy of the justice here in Rwanda, but also the need to work on a daily basis on tackling these inequalities. There were important messages that we will bring forward out of this room. And as we celebrate the UN Day and the Rwanda's 60th anniversary in the UN, let's remember the values of the UN Charter and the clear commitment to work in that multilateral context to avoid, to make sure that we live in a safer world for all. So with this, thank you very much to all, and looking forward to further engagement out of this room.
Thank you. They deserve that hand of applause. Thank you, Ambassador Oyara. Thank you very much. Let's just add that Miss Ofona does not look one day over 26. I'm just saying this. I don't know about this age he's talking about. All right. You can get back to your seats. Let's clap again for our esteemed panel, please. Thank you. As they do, let's now turn our attention to the United Nations Resident Coordinator, Mr. Zonia Ojielo, who joins us online to give us closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Moderator, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Dr. Vincent Biruta, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. Ms. Sanda Ojiambo, UN Assistant Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer of the UN Global Compact. Your Excellency, Mr. Guy Nestor Itua, Ambassador of the Republic of Congo and Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Your Excellency, Ambassador Cleva Gatete, Permanent Representative of Rwanda to the UN in New York. Your Excellency, Ms. Belen Kalvar-Oyara, Ambassador of the European Union in Rwanda. Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, Lord Mayor, City of Kigali, senior government officials, fellow UN colleagues, heads of agencies, the panelists, representatives of international organizations, NGOs, civil society, private sector, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to express my profound gratitude to you all on behalf of the United Nations system in Rwanda for joining the government, the people of Rwanda, and the United Nations in these celebrations. Your presence is testimony of our strength and partnership and friendship, as well as our mutual commitment to the UN Charter. Regrettably, I cannot be with you physically due to other commitments that required my presence here at UN headquarters in New York, but profound thanks to my brother Max, UNDP resident representative, for representing me so well. Ladies and gentlemen, some of us may be new in Rwanda, but we're not new to its history. Rwanda faced terrible atrocities in 1994 in the genocide against the Tutsi. That episode remains a stain on the conscience of the international community. As we mark the anniversary of the day in 1945, when the UN Charter entered into force, and as we celebrate 60 years anniversary of Rwanda in the UN since 18 September 1962, it is a moment to appreciate how this beautiful country, Rwanda, has become a remarkable example for economic and social transformation in spite of the terrible events of 1994. It is an opportunity to reflect on how the United Nations and international community have seized the opportunity to work with the government and the people of Rwanda from post-genocide reconstruction to peace building and to development. The testimonies and reflections from the excellent panels that we have had today is also testimony of the resilience of Rwanda, the visionary leadership and the right choices that have led Rwanda to what it is today. So what you have witnessed today in terms of the two panels is a sampler of the next phase of the collaboration between the United Nations system and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. So first is that the quality of the conversation that we've witnessed in terms of the two panels is something we want to document and share much more widely within Rwanda and outside as we make a significant effort to document the significant social and economic transformations that have taken place in Rwanda. So I would like to invite the panelists to kindly elaborate some more on their interventions and to share with us so that together with the MENAFET, we can transform these interventions into a longer report as well as a book project that we should be shared globally. And I think that the appetite to continue the conversation with the two panels demonstrates a yearning need, and I hope that together with MENAFET, we can now create that platform for some kind of regular engagement, say every quarter, for debates on these big international development challenges that the world faces. As Rwanda continues to not just showcase its own transformation, but to provide leadership for the rest of Africa on how to address the wicked and the protracted challenges of development in the world today. So hopefully we should be able to invite you on a much more regular basis on different themes that all of us can reflect and debate on and offer recommendations, not just to the government of Rwanda, but to the African Union and to the international community on how to address these challenges. And the third is an ongoing effort between the United Nations system, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, and the Office of the Spokesperson of the government to more deliberatively document these transformations. So through reports, but also video testimonials to capture the significant transformations and transitions that have taken place since 1994. And so as many other countries in Africa and parts of the world face similar challenges and similar development issues, they don't need to reinvent the wheel. They could find a comparator in the example of Rwanda and maybe adapt the Rwandan experience as may suit their own context. As I conclude, allow me on behalf of the United Nations system in Rwanda to express our appreciation to the leadership of the country, His Excellency President Paul Kagame. I had the opportunity to meet with him just a day before my departure to New York and to present my letters of credence, together, of course, with the EU ambassador and the ambassador of Denmark. Our utmost gratitude goes to the Honorable Dr. Vincent Biruta for his leadership in determining the nature and context of this year's celebration of UN Day. Our appreciation also to Ambassador Clever Gatete, the permanent representative of Rwanda in the United Nations in New York, who traveled from New York to attend these celebrations and for chairing the first panel so admirably. Our gratitude also goes to Ambassador Belen, the EU ambassador in Rwanda, and to all the panelists. What an two excellent panels that we have had today for responding positively to our request to speak at this celebration, but also for sharing their great wealth and knowledge with the rest of us participants. I cannot forget to appreciate you, excellencies, ambassadors, high commissioners, development partners, senior government officials, my colleague heads of agencies in the United Nations system, and all partners who are present today for your commitment to support the government of Rwanda to achieve the National Structural Transformation One Plan, but ultimately to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to conclude by expressing appreciation to the team from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, the team in my office, the Resident Coordinator's Office, and the UN Communications Group for delivering such a successful event to us today. To all of us and to all United Nations staff in Rwanda, I wish us a happy UN Day. I'd like to invite you all to another homegrown initiative and celebration, which is Umuganda, which comes up on Saturday, 29th October 2022, where the UN and other partners will join the government in the tree planting exercise. I want to assure that the United Nations in Rwanda remains committed to working with the government of Rwanda and with other partners in pursuing peace, human rights, social and economic development, and ensuring that no one is left behind. You can always count on us as your partner of choice. Happy 60th anniversary to the UN Rwanda. Happy UN Day. Thank you, Murakoze Chiane.
We thank you very much, United Nations Resident Coordinator, Mr. Ojelio. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, we have run quite late on the program, but that does not mean that lunch has to move. We're still having lunch. It will be taking place in the tent, which once you get outside is on your left. The protocol team will be guiding you. We thank all the delegates. Clap for yourselves, please. All the delegates, all the esteemed moderators, all the panelists for their availability, their participation, and also all the online participants. Your contribution was very important. Happy 60th anniversary to Rwanda being part of the United Nations, and happy UN Day to everybody. My name is Regis Isheja. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Have yourself a great day. Bon appétit.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king,